Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about something really, really fascinating. Black Jewish communities throughout history.
Very interesting stuff.
And we are going to be guided on this journey by a book called From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph Windsor.
A classic.
Yeah. And this book has been around for a while. I think it was first published in 1969.
Wow.
So it's gone through a number of printings, but one of the things that's really interesting about this book is that it's a little bit controversial.
For sure.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But Windsor doesn't really waste any time. He kind of jumps right in and
He does.
gets to the good stuff.
Right into it.
Yeah.
Buckle up.
So right away,
Yeah.
he takes us back thousands of years to ancient Mesopotamia.
Okay.
And right from the start, he argues that the most remarkable civilization that developed over 6,000 years ago was a black civilization.
Wow.
And this was before what we traditionally consider the roots of Western civilization.
So he's kind of turning history on its head. Yeah, in a way.
And he gets very specific in terms of his arguments.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he points to is the biblical Garden of Eden.
Interesting.
And he actually uses the rivers that are mentioned in the book of Genesis,
Okay.
the Tigris and the Euphrates, to place the Garden of Eden squarely in a region that he believes was populated by black people.
It makes you wonder how much of our understanding of history is shaped by our own interpretations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that
Using the Bible as a historical and geographical document is really interesting.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. And he doesn't stop there. He actually goes on to claim that the ancient Sumerians, Babylonians, and Ethiopians were also black,
Wow.
and that they were pioneers in astrology, astronomy, and even timekeeping.
So he's attributing the foundation of these complex systems to a black civilization.
Yeah, he really is.
It's amazing.
It's a huge claim.
Huge claim.
I mean, if you think about it.
It really does challenge like the traditional narrative that we hear about the history of the world.
Right, and that's what makes this so interesting.
Totally.
It's like we're not here to say like, oh yeah, we believe everything Windsor's saying.
Right.
But it's really interesting to think about.
To just examine it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of challenge our own assumptions.
For sure.
About how we view history.
Absolutely.
So moving on from ancient Mesopotamia, he talks about the Canaanites.
Okay.
And he actually describes them as the primordial aborigines of the land of Canaan.
Okay.
And he also suggests that they had blood relationships to other African peoples.
Interesting.
So he's painting this picture of a thriving community that existed long before the arrival of the Israelites.
And the land of Canaan was home to 11 Canaanite tribes before the Israelites came.
That's right.
Each with their own unique history and culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then he kind of zooms in on two major Canaanite cities,
Okay.
Tyre and Sidon.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, and he really portrays them as these vibrant hubs of culture and commerce,
Oh, wow.
just teeming with life and ideas.
Really cool.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting.
All right.
He points out that there's actually a very close linguistic connection between Phoenicians,
Okay.
which was the language of the Canaanites,
Right.
and Hebrew.
Wow, that's interesting.
And he even goes so far as to say that the Phoenicians were the ones who taught the Greeks their alphabet.
He's connecting all these dots that
Yeah.
we never even thought about.
Yeah, it's like this hidden thread through history
Yeah.
that he's kind of pulling out and making us aware of.
I like that.
And that thread leads us to ancient Egypt.
Okay.
And Windsor is very clear in his assertion that the Egyptians were a black civilization.
Interesting.
And he really dives deep into their achievements,
Okay.
highlighting their mastery of mathematics, geometry, astronomy, and medicine.
Wow.
And he even points out that the word algebra itself comes from the Arabic word algem.
Showing how deeply intertwined these cultures are.
Exactly. And you have to remember, this is a time when a lot of these fields were still in their infancy.
They were just beginning.
Yeah, and the Egyptians were really making significant strides.
Yeah, they weren't messing around.
No, they weren't.
They were serious about it.
And he actually links their knowledge to the environment they lived in.
Okay.
He suggests that the annual flooding of the Nile played a crucial role in their understanding of geometry, engineering, and astronomy.
It makes you think,
Yeah,
how much does our physical environment shape our intellectual development?
that's a great question.
It is.
And so then he kind of takes us from this practical world of mathematics and engineering into the world of mythology
Okay.
and storytelling.
Interesting.
He spends some time talking about the story of Osiris and Isis.
From Egyptian mythology.
Yeah, and I think most of our listeners are probably familiar with
At least the basics.
the basics
Yeah.
of Egyptian mythology. But have you ever considered how it connects to later religious beliefs?
That's interesting.
Windsor does. He
Yeah.
sees these ancient myths as being kind of this foundation for stories that would later
Shape other religions.
shape Christianity.
Wow, that's a bold claim.
It is.
But really interesting to think about.
And that leads us to the heart of the book,
Yep.
which is the Black Jewish communities that he believes existed throughout history.
So this is the central focus of From Babylon to Timbuktu.
He dedicates significant portions of this book to these communities.
Okay.
And he starts by suggesting that the Hebrews may have actually migrated to Egypt during the rule of the Hyksos.
Who were the Hyksos?
So the Hyksos were a group that ruled Egypt for a period of time, and Windsor believes that they were also Black.
Okay.
And he argues that they may have actually facilitated the migration of Jewish people from the Levant into Egypt.
Interesting.
Now, of course, not all historians agree with Windsor's interpretations,
Right.
but that's what makes this so compelling.
It's thought-provoking.
Yeah,
Like,
it's okay to disagree. But it's more about asking questions and digging deeper.
Totally.
So let's actually take a look at some of the specific communities
Okay, then.
that he identifies.
Excited.
He really paints a vivid picture of these groups.
Yeah.
And each of them has this fascinating story to tell.
I bet.
So we have the Black African Hebrews of Egypt.
Okay.
Now, he doesn't really give us like a clear origin story for them.
Great.
But he speculates that they may have had a connection to King Solomon's trade routes and maybe even the Queen of Sheba.
Wow. Just imagine
Yeah.
the implications of that.
It's incredible.
That connection
Yeah.
between ancient Israel and Black communities in Africa.
And then we travel to Ethiopia, which is home to the Tabiban Jews.
Tabi Banji.
They're also known as the Falasha Jews
Okay.
and the Wasambara Jews.
Okay.
And these groups are particularly intriguing because they have these unique religious practices
Okay.
and cultural traditions that set them apart from other Jewish communities.
So they have a long history in Ethiopia.
Yeah, they've been there for centuries.
Wow.
And then we have the North African Black Jews.
Oh, okay.
And this community kind of shares cultural similarities with other Jewish communities,
Got
but
it.
they also maintain this unique identity of their own.
Right.
And then we have the Jews of the Malagasy Republic.
Where's that?
That's in Madagascar.
Oh, okay.
And they're possibly linked to ancient Jewish migrations across the Indian Ocean.
It makes you think about the incredible journeys these communities undertook
Right.
throughout history.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And then we have something that really challenges our preconceived notions.
What is that?
The Black Jewish Empire of Ghana.
The Black Jewish Empire of Ghana.
He claims that during the Middle Ages, this empire was ruled by Black Jewish kings.
Wow.
This powerful and influential empire.
That changes how we think about medieval Africa.
Yeah, it really does.
Completely.
It raises so many questions about the interconnectedness of cultures
Totally.
and just the fluidity of identity. And it doesn't stop there.
Oh,
There's more.
okay. I'm ready.
Yeah.
He introduces us to Eldad the Danite.
Okay.
And he was a historical figure that played a really crucial role in establishing a Black Jewish presence in Western Sudan.
Wow.
And this leads us to the Empire of Mali,
Okay.
which, according to Windsor, flourished under Black Jewish leadership.
Really?
Yeah. He even mentions the famous pilgrimage of Mansa Musa to Mecca.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that journey that showcased the immense wealth and influence of this empire.
It's like we're seeing a whole new side of African history.
Yeah, like it's unfolding before our eyes.
Challenging everything we thought we knew.
Exactly.
But of course, this period of flourishing wouldn't last forever.
Right.
Eventually, events would lead to the dispersion of these Black Jewish communities across Africa and beyond.
So what were some of the catalysts for this dispersion?
Well, Windsor points to two major historical events.
Okay.
First, you have the expulsion of the Jews from Spain and Portugal.
When was that?
That was in 1492 and 1496. And a significant number of Black Jews were caught up in this forced exodus.
So they had to flee,
Yeah, they had to find refuge in other parts of the world.
and some of them went to Africa.
Some of them did.
Why?
And then, of course, you have the transatlantic slave trade,
Right.
which was just a horrific chapter in human history.
Absolutely.
And it profoundly affected Black Jewish populations.
It's hard to even imagine
Yeah.
the complexity of their experience, the
Right.
persecution, the displacement.
And then to be swept up in this brutal system of slavery.
It's a story that's often overlooked.
It is.
A hidden dimension of history.
It really makes you think about how the history of Black Jewish communities is not this like monolithic narrative. It's really this tapestry. A
Tapestry.
woven with threads of resilience and adaptation.
And sadly suffering.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But it's important to confront these difficult aspects of history.
It is.
So picking up where we left off,
Yeah.
let's look at how Windsor builds his case for the existence of these Black Jewish communities.
Okay.
He kind of weaves together these historical events and biblical interpretations and even linguistic analysis.
It's really quite an intricate tapestry.
It is.
Like he's asking us to reconsider everything we thought we knew.
Yeah, about ancient history and the people who shaped it.
One of the things that I found really interesting was his focus on the concept of blackness
Okay.
in ancient Mesopotamia.
Yeah, he makes some interesting connections there.
He does.
He argues that the term Cush,
Okay.
which appears a lot in the Bible,
Yeah.
actually refers to Ethiopia.
Okay.
And from that, he suggests that many figures and groups mentioned in the Bible,
Yeah.
who we often picture very differently, were actually Black.
It's like we're seeing these familiar stories through a brand new lens.
Exactly.
For example, he points to the story of Nimrod, who is mentioned in the book of Genesis.
Yeah, that powerful ruler.
Right. And he uses descriptions of Nimrod's kingdom and his relationships with other biblical figures to suggest that Nimrod himself was Black.
Interesting.
And he even goes as far as to suggest that Abraham,
Okay.
the patriarch of the Jewish people, was Black.
Now, that's a claim that's going to spark some debate.
It is.
For sure.
And he bases this idea on Abraham's origins in Ur of the Chaldees,
Okay.
which he believes was populated by Black people.
Okay.
And he also points to Abraham's marriage to Hagar,
Okay.
who was an Egyptian woman,
Right.
as further evidence.
It makes you think about how these different interpretations
Yeah,
impact our understanding of history
for sure.
and even identity.
Yeah, and it makes you think about the assumptions that we bring to the table when we read these ancient texts.
Absolutely. Our own biases and preconceived notions.
So moving on from Mesopotamia,
Okay.
he also focuses on ancient Egypt
Right.
as a key location for Black Jewish communities.
And he does present quite a bit of evidence
He does.
to support this idea
Yeah.
of a strong Black presence in ancient Egypt.
Yeah. Like what kind of evidence?
Well, he points to the countless paintings and sculptures
Right.
that depict Egyptians with dark skin
Yeah.
and African features.
You can't really argue with the visual evidence.
It's right there.
right there in front of us.
And he goes beyond just physical appearance.
Okay.
He looks at cultural practices,
Okay.
religious beliefs,
Okay.
and he draws parallels with Jewish traditions.
So he's not just saying they looked alike.
No, he's arguing for a deeper connection.
A deeper connection.
Yeah, like a cultural and spiritual connection.
Okay.
One of the most fascinating connections he makes is between the Egyptian god Osiris
Okay.
and the later story of Jesus.
Wow.
He points to similarities in their narratives,
Okay.
suggesting a potential transmission of ideas from ancient Egypt to early Christianity.
That's pretty wild.
It is.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the flow of ideas
Yeah.
across time and cultures.
Across millennia.
Right.
Yeah.
And remember the Hierarchos we talked about earlier?
Oh.
He brings them back into the picture here.
Okay.
He suggests that they played a key role in bringing Jewish people to Egypt.
Okay.
He believes that the Hyksos were themselves a Black people,
Okay.
and that they may have facilitated the migration of Jewish people from the Levant into Egypt.
So we're seeing these multiple strands of history and culture coming together.
Yeah, he's weaving them together
Yeah.
to build his argument.
It's a very compelling narrative.
It is.
And it's important to remember that these are just a few examples
Right.
of the evidence that he presents throughout the book.
He goes into a lot of detail.
He does.
He's very thorough.
He delves into linguistic analysis,
Okay.
looking at the connections between different languages
Yeah.
and cultures
To support his claims.
to further support his claims.
Yeah.
He even traces the evolution of words and phrases
Oh.
to demonstrate the interconnectedness of these communities.
It's like he's using language as a time machine
I like that.
to uncover these hidden relationships
Yeah.
between cultures that might seem worlds apart.
It's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
But now it's important to acknowledge
Yeah.
that not all of Windsor's claims are universally accepted.
Right.
Some scholars have criticized his work.
They have.
Yeah, arguing that certain interpretations are speculative
Okay.
or that they lack sufficient evidence.
So it's important to approach his work with a critical eye.
Yes, Absolutely.
As we should with any historical text.
Right. We're not saying take everything he says as gospel truth.
No, of course not.
But even those who disagree with him acknowledge that his book has sparked some really important conversations.
What kind of conversations?
About race, religion, and identity.
Those are important topics.
They are.
Especially today.
Especially today.
It's a reminder that history is not static.
Right.
It's constantly being reinterpreted and re-examined.
As new evidence emerges.
Exactly, and perspectives evolve.
And sometimes it takes a bold voice like Windsor's to kind of shake things up and challenge the status quo.
To make us think differently about the world.
Now, up until this point, we've mainly focused on Windsor's arguments in support of Black Jewish communities.
Right.
But there's another aspect of his book that we need to address.
Okay.
And this is where we need to tread a little bit carefully.
Why is that?
Because it ventures into more controversial territory.
Oh, okay. I'm here.
And this is his discussion of the origins of the white race.
Okay. This is where we need to proceed with caution.
Exactly.
And a critical mindset.
Yes. And it's really important for our listeners to remember that we're exploring the content of the book within its historical context.
Right. So let's unpack this carefully.
Okay.
What does Windsor say about the origins of the white race?
Well, he puts forward this theory that the white race originated as a result of a curse.
A curse?
Yeah.
On who?
Placed upon a man named Gehazi.
Gehazi.
And he was a servant of the prophet Elisha in the Bible.
Okay, and what was this curse?
So according to Windsor, this curse resulted in Gehazi and his descendants becoming white.
He's saying that whiteness is a result of a curse.
That's his theory.
That's a very bold statement.
It is.
And where does he get this idea from?
Well, he cites biblical passages to support this claim.
Okay, like what passages?
Specifically those that describe Gehazi's skin becoming white as snow after he is cursed.
So he's taking that literally.
It seems so.
That's a very literal interpretation.
It is.
In the Bible.
And it's important to understand that this theory is not supported by mainstream scientific or historical scholarship.
So it's not a widely accepted view?
Not at all.
Okay.
In fact, many scholars have criticized Windsor's views on race as being inaccurate and potentially harmful.
So we need to be mindful of that.
Yes, absolutely.
As we discuss this.
And it's crucial to have that context.
Right.
As we navigate these sensitive topics.
We're not here to endorse or refute his theories.
Right.
We're simply presenting them to the listener.
Yes.
And inviting them to engage in critical thinking.
Oh, exactly.
And draw their own conclusions.
Yeah. Now, moving beyond this controversial theory.
Okay.
Let's return to Windsor's discussion of the dispersion of Black Jewish communities across Africa and beyond.
So what does he say about that?
Well, he argues that these communities faced persecution and displacement throughout history, which led to them being scattered across the globe.
Okay.
And he specifically mentions the expulsion of Jews from Spain and Portugal in the late 15th century.
Yeah.
And he highlights the presence of Black Jews among those who were forced to flee.
It's a reminder that the Jewish diaspora was not a homogeneous experience.
Right.
It impacted diverse communities in unique ways.
Yeah.
With Black Jews facing their own set of challenges and triumphs.
And Windsor suggests that these Black Jews sought refuge in various locations.
Like where?
Including North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and even the Americas.
Wow. So they really were scattered far and wide.
They were.
It's like we're seeing this hidden map of migration unfold.
Yeah.
Revealing the paths that these communities took.
Right.
As they navigated a world that was often hostile to their presence.
And then, of course, there's the transatlantic slave trade,
right?
That devastating chapter that tragically intertwined with the history of Black Jewish communities.
It's a complex and heartbreaking story.
It is.
Windsor argues that many Black Jews were captured and enslaved during this period, which further contributed to their dispersion.
And the loss of their cultural heritage.
It's a heartbreaking reminder of the brutality of slavery.
Yes.
And its lasting impact.
On generations of people.
And it's also a stark reminder of the intersectionality of oppression.
Yes.
How different forms of prejudice can converge.
And create even greater suffering.
Exactly.
For marginalized communities.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
It compels us to think about the complexities of identity.
Yes.
And how race, religion, and ethnicity can intersect.
In ways that both unite and divide us.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
And it leads us to a crucial question.
What's that?
How can we, as individuals and as a society, better understand and appreciate the diversity of human experience?
Especially in the face of historical and contemporary injustices.
That's a question that we all need to grapple with.
Yeah, it really does make you think.
It does.
It's a question that kind of stays with you.
It lingers.
Yeah.
And Windsor's book, From Babylon to Timbuktu, really gives us that starting point for that exploration.
He doesn't just, make these broad claims.
No.
He gets into the specifics.
He does.
Talks about
the details.
Yeah, the unique histories and traditions of these different communities.
Of all these different Black Jewish communities.
Like the Black African Hebrews of Egypt.
Right.
The Falasha Jews of Ethiopia.
The Black Jews of the Songhay Empire.
He brings them to life.
He does.
It's all these vivid details.
And he connects them all.
Yeah.
He suggests that they have a shared history.
Right.
That they've had these cultural exchanges.
Spanning continents and centuries.
It's incredible.
So
he doesn't present them as isolated groups.
Right.
He presents them as these interconnected threads in this larger tapestry of Black Jewish experience.
He even speculates about possible connections between these communities and figures like King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba.
Yeah.
And he talks about these ancient trade routes.
These royal alliances.
It really captures the imagination.
It does.
And one of the things that makes Windsor's book so compelling, I think, is his approach to historical research.
It's unique.
Yeah. He doesn't just present like dry facts and figures.
No, he brings it to life.
Yeah, he's telling a story.
He is.
And it's a story that makes us think critically
and question the assumptions we have
about history.
Exactly.
And he uses linguistic analysis to support his claims.
Like, how does he do that?
Well, he traces the evolution of words and phrases to show the connections between different languages and cultures.
And what's he trying to prove with that?
He's trying to show how these communities are all interconnected, even though they might seem worlds apart.
It's really amazing.
It is.
To think about the power of language.
Yeah, not just as a way to communicate.
Right.
But as a way to look into the past.
Yeah.
But as we said before,
yeah,
it's important to be critical.
Of course.
When we read this book.
Right.
Not all of his claims are universally accepted.
Right. Some scholars have questioned his interpretations.
Exactly.
And the evidence he uses.
So we should always be thinking critically when we're reading historical texts.
Engaging with the material from Babylon to Timbuktu is really just a starting point.
Yeah, it's not the final word. It's more like an invitation to learn more.
To delve deeper.
Into these communities.
To have these discussions.
So we encourage all of our listeners to continue exploring this topic.
Read the book.
Yeah, read From Babylon to Timbuktu.
Do your own research.
Talk to people who are interested in this.
Engage in those conversations.
Because the journey of discovery
doesn't end here.
It's a lifelong process.
Exactly.
So thank you for joining us on this incredible journey.
Yeah, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
And until next time, keep exploring.